meeting is being recorded.
So since I'm arriving, am I just starting now or?
Yeah, you're starting now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's been a long time since I've spoken to your group, so a lot of you probably don't know me. But I want to talk to you today about the roses of Viraraghavan. And I teach at Florida Southern College, which is in Lakeland, down in the middle of the state, famous for its Frank Lloyd Wright architecture, but in more recent years also for its roses. So not too far from you all. You all are a little cooler in the winter, and so you can grow some of the varieties that we probably can't. We started growing roses in 1983 due to our starting a rose mosaic virus heat therapy program. So this was the first garden, and then we enlarged that to a garden of about 100 plants. And then in 2011, we were notified that the garden was going to be removed, and so we needed to do a new garden. And sometime during that period, I became familiar with and started growing the Viraraghavan roses. I'm not sure exactly when, but Gene Waring is the one who got me started on them. So of our whole collection, I repropagated the whole collection, about 300 plants. And so this is that field where that garden had been. The way it looks now, not much left there of the rose garden. But we moved everything into pots, and fortunately we teach horticulture, so I had students who could help with that, and there's the collection while we were developing the new garden. And this was the site that was selected for the new garden. Stephen Scaniello designed the garden, and we got it all staked out like this. And then the people who mow the lawns, it's a contract lawn service company, decided they wanted to mow that. So they came in and pulled out all the stakes and removed all the rope. So we had to start over, which was disastrous. But we had a student who very kindly went out and spent most of a day crawling on her hands and knees, finding the holes where the bamboo sticks came out. I think somebody's not muted. So what we have now is Ruth's Rose Garden, and that houses almost all of the Viraraghavan roses, as well as most of the rest of our collection. So here we're getting ready to plant the garden. We grow most of our roses on Fortuniana rootstock. We're getting a lot of feedback. I think if somebody might want to mute that's not muted. So this is the way the garden looks today. We don't have a specific area for specific groups of roses like the Viraraghavan roses. They're just kind of blended in with the others. So it gives quite a hodgepodge of colors and sizes, which I kind of like. I suppose we could make it more orderly, but we don't. So to talk specifically about Viru's roses, as I say, I'm not sure what year I learned about them. It was Gene Waring who told me about them. But Mr. Viraraghavan had a career in numerous Indian government positions and eventually was Secretary of the Department of Agriculture and Horticulture in Andhra Pradesh state. He retired after 20 years of service to pursue his love of breeding roses and passed away just this past December, I'm sorry to say. So years ago, Gene Waring brought the roses to my attention. Pat Henry at Roses Unlimited in South Carolina had been importing them and putting them through quarantine. And over the years, Girija and Viru have visited Florida Southern several times. I know they've also been to Jacksonville, so some of you have met them. And we've been collecting their roses then for these many years. Some of them have proven to be really good in our Central Florida garden, and so I like to brag on those. The Viraraghavans were named Great Rosarians of the World in 2006, certainly well-deserved. And here they are in Brussels last year at the World Federation of Rose Societies meeting. This was a meeting in France where we met up. We seem to meet up all over the world. And then this is in our garden at Florida Southern. The rose behind us is Maggie. And we're with Pat Shanley there. Pat was the president of the American Rose Society at that time. So Viru has bred roses of a lot of different classes using different genetic backgrounds over the years. But one area that has particularly fascinated me is his use of native Indian warm climate species to develop roses that would do well in warm, humid climates like ours. So we use Rosa clenophylla and Rosa gigantea, as well as Rosa bracteata and some other roses that are not often used in breeding modern roses. Because they're quite genetically variable, some of his hybrids look like hybrid teas or floribundas or teas or chinas, or some are kind of unclassifiable, I would say. So this is Rosa clenophylla, native in warm tropical swamps. Sometimes it grows actually in water, and it resembles Rosa bracteata. And then also Rosa gigantea, which has an Indian form and then another form from east of there in Myanmar. And so a lot of other roses that have Rosa gigantea apparently have the Burmese or Myanmar form in their background. But Viru used the Indian form. This tends to give you climbers with big shiny leaves, huge hips, and big flowers. And so a good rose to use again in breeding. So let me just talk about some of the varieties that we've grown. So here's Krishna's peach. This is one that I've had for a good number of years in a pot in the greenhouse, but only in the last year we've moved it out of the garden. So I really don't know what to tell you about how it's going to do in the garden. So far, it's fairly compact. It's blooming regularly, doing very well for us. People always ask about disease resistance, and that's a difficult thing for me to answer because the college's gardens are sprayed with a fungicide. So I don't really see a lot of black spot or mildew, even on very susceptible roses. So I do have a friend, Alicia Whidden, who grows some of these roses without spraying. And when I've heard from her about a rose that's particularly resistant, I will tell you that as we go through these. Langique rose is a single good-sized flower, yellow to almost kind of a caramelly color. I really like singles. I've always been fond of them. And again, for this, it's been in our garden maybe 2 years. I would say it's made kind of a medium-sized bush, growth habits similar to a hybrid tea or a floribunda. Ahimsa then is a much brighter yellow. In cool weather, you get this really brilliant sulfur yellow. In hot summer weather, it'll be somewhat paler, but it's always a good true yellow. This one for us has stayed very compact. And I know you all, some of you have chili thrips just as we do. This is one that I find is quite susceptible to chili thrips. So you will have to protect it. Last year, it did not do well for me for that reason. But this year we have the thrips under control, and it's really looking pretty good right now. One of my favorites of the group is Coffee Country. This is, I would say it grows like a floribunda. In hot weather, it's quite pink, different shades of pink. But in cool weather, you get these interesting brown shades, almost like coffee with milk in it. And I like that look. I put a lot of pictures of it in here because I like it so much. This one has grown very well for us. It flowers all the time. And if I were just recommending a handful of Viru's roses, this would certainly be on that list. This is in warmer weather where they tend to be more pink. Jay Hires is one of the newer ones. Some of you know the man, Jay. He is in South Carolina and is developing the species rose garden for the American Rose Society. So this rose was named in his honor. I grew it in a pot in the greenhouse. I think somebody's not unmute again. You might want to check that. We've only grown this in a pot in the greenhouse, so I can't really say how it would do in the garden. It starts out with a beautiful hybrid tea form bud and then opens up wide like this to show the stamens. It's done very well for us in the greenhouse, but that is, as I say, the only place I've grown it so far. Twilight Tryst is another hybrid tea type. This picture really doesn't quite do it justice. This is kind of reddish purple. I'd call it more of a true purple. And with those shades, of course, a photograph often gets the color wrong. It's quite fragrant, a really beautiful rose. It's another one of my favorites. Emina, then, a lot of people mispronounce this as Emina, but it is Emina. Brilliant fire engine red with some yellow. Excuse me. This is one that Alicia Whidden has grown without spraying, and she says it's at least as disease resistant and carefree as the Knockout series. So she thinks it ought to be replacing a lot of Knockouts, and it certainly is a great rose. It's a real showstopper in the garden. Grows probably, I would say, 5 by 5 feet. If you really let it go, it might go 6 by 6. Always full, almost always in bloom. And even in the hottest weather, the blooms are just beautiful. So again, if I were giving a short list of things I would highly recommend, this would be near the top of the list. Not a lot of fragrance in this one. Then we come to Faith Whittlesey. If I had to pick a #1 of Verou's roses for our garden, I would say this is it. Grows like a medium-sized Floribunda. This, by the way, is the lady, Ambassador Whittlesey, there next to me, and then the Viraraghavans, and then Maria Carver, our greenhouse manager, and Alicia Whidden, the friend I've told you about. This was in our garden. We had just planted a bed of the Faith Whittlesey rose, and Ambassador Whittlesey came to see it in the garden. So we're each holding one there. That is her rose in front of us there. This is it in that garden. This is the other rose garden that you've not seen yet. This thing grows like an absolute weed. It never gets huge, but it's always growing, always blooming. And you can see it's just covered with flowers. One of the things that I've always been interested in is as you know, a lot of Floridians grow our roses mainly on Fortuniana roots. And sometimes we don't know whether a rose would do well on its own roots. So this picture I took in my garden this morning, actually. This rose right here is on its own roots. And then there are actually 3 plants here on Fortuniana. Those are all about 5 years old, I think. Might be 4, but they're at least 4 years old. We prune them to the same size every spring. And so that own root plant is perfectly healthy, but the grafted plants grow to be at least twice as large with twice as many flowers. So if you need a compact rose in a compact place, I think it's perfectly fine to grow this one on its own roots. But there is an advantage if you've got the space for it to put it on Fortuniana. So I do like doing that. If you happen to grow roses from seed, this one is also a very fertile parent, either as female or male. And it makes nice seedlings. This was a first flush after the spring pruning. Remembering Crochet then is rather hybrid tea-like, pale pink to almost creamy white in hot weather. I would say grows like a Floribunda, but the flowers tend to come in single flowers rather than in clusters. Let's see, we're going to run out of time here. Spice Trail is a very good, a very fragrant variety. Quite variable with the weather. It's kind of like Double Delight in the sense that it starts out white in the greenhouse. It's pretty much a white rose, but with sunlight, it gets this dappling of pink to almost purpley red. This one we grow as Pat Henry. Now, Girija has told me that we may have a problem here. The rose Pat Henry is named for the lady who owns Roses Unlimited and who first introduced the Viraraghavan roses to the US. And her rose was more, if you can see my cursor there, this lighter pink color. It later sported to a much darker color, which was named Stan Henry for Pat's late husband. And our rose seems to be somewhere in between. It makes flowers of both types. So what we may have is a rehash of the sport there. But whatever this is, it's a beautiful rose and I like it. Again, very hybrid tea-like, I would say, as far as growth habit, size, flowers, that sort of thing. Very typical of a cut flower type hybrid tea. And then Helga's Quest, of the hybrid tea types, this one may be my favorite. Quite variable in color. It can come out kind of a peachy yellow and turn orange and then turn deep pink, almost red in some weather. Blooms all the time. This is another one you have to protect from chili thrips, but if you do, it's a really rewarding rose and another one of my favorites. This was named for Helga Bruchette, who some of you know from the World Federation of Rose Societies. Nagabell has carefree beauty in it and is a carefree bush. This is one that I think you might be able to grow without spraying. Makes this beautiful hybrid tea form flower that eventually does open out to show stamens. And then a seedling of that, which I was very honored that they named for me, grows similarly to Nagabell, but in cool weather, it produces these interesting shades of green and brown on the buds. It tends to open up to be truly pink then after that. And in hot weather, it's always pink, but another shrub or hybrid tea type flower. New Blush is a seedling of Old Blush. And if you needed a very compact growing rose, this might be a nice one. This one, I would say it's kind of nondescript in our garden. It is, as I say, compact. The flowers are small. And so it doesn't draw a lot of attention, but it is a nice rose. Kindly Light is a nice one too. Hybrid tea form flowers, they tend to be born one flower per stem, but the flowers are smaller than the average hybrid tea. I would say more like a floribunda type flower. Palest pink to creamy white. Another very good grower, blooms all the time. This is one that I very much like in the garden. This is Carrie's rose. Some of you know Carrie Massey. I don't know if she's in the audience today, from Jacksonville. And it has an interesting genetic background. It has some Rosa persica in it, which is that rose that gives the interesting red eye in the center of the flower. This one doesn't show that. This beautiful shade of orange. This is a climber. We grow it as a pillar. This one can be quite beautiful, especially in the winter. In the summer, I find that it grows very, very vigorously, even on an 8-foot pillar. It really gets too big for that space and doesn't bloom a lot in the summer. So much as I like Carrie, I can't say that this is a favorite among the group of mine. But if you need a big growing pillar and you want orange, this might be a good choice. Viraraghavan then is a hybrid tea form. It looks kind of like an old rose or an Austin rose, perhaps, and blooms all the time. Compact hybrid tea type growth, I would say. Lindy's First Love then is a hybrid tea type. This is named for Lindy Myers, who also many of you know from your society. This is another one that we've grown in the greenhouse for years, and I do like it there. We put it out in the garden this past spring, and it hasn't been there long enough for me to really evaluate it yet as a garden rose. So far, it seems to be fine. People always wonder where you can buy these. Roses Unlimited is Pat Henry's nursery in Lawrence, South Carolina. And then we have the three North Florida nurseries, Angel Gardens, Rose Petals, and A Reverence for Roses, all three of whom grow some of the Viraraghavan roses. Angel Gardens is trying to develop a complete inventory of them. I don't know if they have that yet. Some of you may have attended their open house this past weekend celebrating the Viraraghavan roses. And then Antique Rose Emporium in Brenham, Texas also grows a few of them. So from among those nurseries, you could probably find just about any of these varieties that I've mentioned. And Viru and Girija published a book about a year ago, Roses in the Fire of Spring. This is a fascinating book to read, and I highly recommend it to you. As far as I know, there is no American source, but you can order it directly from Girija. She has welcomed me to say you could message her on Facebook Messenger or email her or use her WhatsApp number, and you could pay by PayPal, and she'll ship you a copy of it. But a great book. It's fun to read, has a lot of history of India and its politics, and they're kind of an autobiography of the couple, and then just their history of roses and rose people and rose gardens that they visited around the world. Just absolutely fascinating. So I recommend it to you very highly. I think we're running out of Zoom time here. It looks like we got 3.5 minutes left, but I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Don't forget to unmute yourself if you're going to ask a question.
Hi, Malcolm. This is Wayne.
Hey, Wayne. There you go.
Yeah, did you import these yourself, or how did you go through the quarantine to acquire this varied collection, probably the biggest collection in the state?
Actually, I think Angel Gardens probably has a bigger collection than ours. No, I got plants originally from Roses Unlimited. Pat had imported quite a lot of them. And then over the years, Gene Waring has given me numerous others, and I'm not sure exactly where Gene got his. I'm trying to think where else I've got them from. But to answer your question, no, I've never imported any of them. We did years and years ago import some things from England and also the Bermuda Mystery Roses, but importation and quarantine has become such an incredible hassle that I've decided I'm too old for that. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Do you know if Garija's and Viru have worked with Ludwig and taken any of their roses into South Africa?
I don't know that.
Do you spray for bugs?
Our garden is sprayed by a spray service, and so they use a fungicide weekly for black spot or mildew in the winter. And when we see chili thrips, they do add a material for that. I'm not sure exactly what he's using. I know he's alternating materials so we don't get resistance. Otherwise, we tend not to. We've never had a significant problem with either mites or aphids in that garden, but we have had trouble with chili thrips. So yes, when we see them building up, we do have the spray service spray for them.
And you don't remember what you spray with?
It's not that I don't remember. It's a commercial spray service that does it.
Okay.
Wayne Myers, he told me to use this spinosad. Yeah, yeah. And it knocked the throats out and had a problem again.
Just as a reminder to y'all, Zoom is going to shut us down here in less than a minute. So thank
Okay.
you. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Malcolm,
Thank you.
we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Wayne and Lindy say hi.
Hi, folks. Good to hear from you.
On Amazon, it's